We will start with a few speaker bios, and I'm going to start with Jay, who is the CEO at Balboa. He comes to us with years of experience in the SaaS ecosystem, co-founder of the Gain, Grow, Retain customer success community. He has a podcast. If anybody wants to listen to that, it is very, very good. Former chief customer officer, former director of product development, and investor with the Green Shoot Innovation, which is one of the investors of Balboa. And then I'm going to give a quick intro to Jenna as well, our main speaker here. Jenna currently leads renewals and CX at Pendo, bringing a diverse post-scale revenue background that includes professional services, technical account management, and technical support leadership. She specializes in driving net revenue retention, strengthening enterprise strategy, and building disciplined, high accountability operating models across revenue teams. Jenna is energized by building new functions, reimagining how teams work, and turning ambitious ideas into scalable, durable growth engines. Really awesome intro because Jenna is a very awesome person. Jenna, do you want to add anything to your intro?
No, I just appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm going to boot up my screen share as we get started. This is so much fun, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it with you all. We have a wonderful CX and revenue community out there, and it's just so fun to get together and see some old friends. I'm getting texts, I'm getting pings. So thank you all for joining, and my fellow Pendozers for the support as well. I will say it's been really fun working with Jay over the last, we'll call it 6 months. Him and I connected years back in the CX community, and now we get to work together more closely, which is super thrilling and exciting. And I learn from him all the time. So we're excited for the content that we have. As Keith mentioned, we're going to kick off with about a 15-minute presentation where I'll just talk about this official new era of customer experience that we're in, where traditional playbooks, they just don't apply. And we have to figure out how to win and move beyond supporting our customers. And we really have to start mastering what our new digital behavior is in order to support them effectively. So this session will really be our roadmap to becoming really AI focused practitioners, and a way more proactive CX organization. So before I dive into my content, I'll shoot it back over to you, Keith, if you want to talk a little bit more about what Balboa does with Pendo, and then we'll jump into the content.
Yeah, I realized I didn't give an intro to myself. I'll just give a brief one. I am the CTO at Balboa, one of the founders, and we founded Balboa because we found that so many of the customers that we were working with were very excited about user data, but not all of them knew exactly how to use it. We would work with them on cleaning up their data, other types of Pendo deployments, product ops, setting up organizations in a way that they can utilize that data and interact with their customers for the better. It is something that we are extremely focused on to make sure that customers are better through our services. It's really exciting. Jay is one of the founders as well, and we've been working at this for just over like a year and a half now, Jay, right?
Yep.
Been a pretty exciting ride.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. And it's a pleasure partnering with you all the time and today. So let's jump into the content. Look, we have this challenge as CX leader, and the challenge is quiet churn. And as it says here, retention is truly our mandate. And as we move forward, digital transformation is not going to be a one-time project or a specific campaign that we can roll out. It's a strategy for our businesses and what we are made to do to stay relevant. We are focusing on digital touch points that directly translate into customer retention and growth. And I'm sure you would all agree, but tell us in the chat if you disagree. But our goal is to ensure that every action, digital and human led, provides measurable value to our end user. And look, as it says here, it costs us all a heck ton of money when we lose our customers. And so I think a lot of us work in businesses where our revenue organizations get a lot of shine, which is great. And some of us might live under revenue organizations, but I am here to say that true growth really depends on retaining our existing revenue and footprint and being able to expand that effectively. And look, there's really no excuses in the future to fly blind anymore. I think the most dangerous customers aren't the ones calling our support teams. They're not the ones asking for our help. They're the ones who stop using our products or start to become silent. And we need to identify these, quote, silent churners long before they decide not to renew. And to me, visibility into these hidden friction points is truly the first step in creating a defensible strategy for us as CX practitioners. And we need to move from this reactive place that many of us still live in out of necessity into proactive revenue retention. And oh, by the way, many of us are being asked to do that with less human resources. So the challenge is big for all of us. I certainly don't have all of the answers, but I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about my perspective on this, and Jay may interrupt me a little bit at the beginning, but what I believe is changing for us as CX leaders is that our strategy really needs to rest on three pillars going forward. Visibility into true usage, whatever you deem to be good and strong usage of your product, having actionable insights, and then creating scalable engagement. When these three gears really work together and creates, what I'll call a self-healing journey without our intervention, that's where the magic is happening. And so we're shifting from focus on simple logins to true value moments. And with that, we're getting a lot of pressure, right? Like I think in the last 18 months, AI started really assisting us in a lot of roles and jobs. And I can speak for myself, we're really getting pressure now as leaders to move it from an assist to a true owner in our business. And so this is where agentic AI comes in and all of these cool agents that I'm sure you're creating internally and externally. And as it also says here, we're really being tasked with proving ROI fast. We have to show this measurable impact. We have to show that we're doing it at a lower cost to serve, but then also being able to raise our retention rates and our NRR and all of that good stuff. So this is changing rapidly for us. And what I will say is what's worked before to try to do some of this stuff won't carry us forward. We're moving away from the sort of generic world that we've lived in the past, and we have to meet our users where they're living and working. And by doing that, I truly believe that we can reduce a lot of friction, and we still have the ability to provide a white glove experience, regardless of how many people we have doing that. And I think the other thing to take away from this piece here is that incremental improvements are no longer going to move the needle. Many of us are being asked to take a step back and fully reimagine our organization and have the conversation. If you could start over with the humans you have, what you know about our customers, and now AI, what would you do differently? And I encourage you all to think like that because, yes, I'm going to talk about experiments in a little bit and why I think they're so much more powerful than trying to drive large scale change at the get-go. You need to do that with line of sight to what your big hypotheses is. And the last thing I'll say here is I mentioned it before, but AI is no longer an add-on to what we do, right? It's really there to redesign our operating models. And this is difficult because we're being asked to try to create hypotheses about how AI can impact that bottom line. Where can we subhuman for AI, and what does that cost differential look like? So how do we do this? Because it's a lot. We have to automate the basics, right? No longer should our human teams be focused on things that AI can do. We need to shift those humans that we are lucky to have who do such great work into high level strategy, maybe with our largest customers or maybe within our customer population, really focusing on outcomes. We have to automate onboarding and FAQs so that we can reach thousands of customers at scale. And we have to shift our CSMs from firefighting into more time-driven expansion focuses. And we're going to talk a little bit about health scoring and how Pendo is solving that problem in just a bit. But I truly think it's one of the biggest differentiators in this new age for us is to really use our data in the most meaningful way possible to detect healthy versus at-risk customers and be able to act earlier and let data drive every single decision. The other thing I'll say here is we have to do all of this and try to figure out how to elevate our skill set and our team's skill set. I would be remiss if I didn't say that so much of our time and energy as CX practitioners in this new world really needs to be about changing the behavior of the people that we do have. They should be focused on technical fluency of our products, a consulting mindset, and being able to truly understand how AI drives their internal decision making and their workflow, but then again, what it means to your products. And so, really designing ongoing enablement for your core teams that you have, truly to me, is one of the biggest levers of winning in this new world as well. So, how are we doing this at Pendo? We certainly do not have all of the answers, I can tell you that. But we, like many people here, are sort of in experimentation mode, excuse me. We are really pushing ourselves to move quickly. I think in this AI era, the cost of slow is much bigger and more impactful than the cost of doing something wrong. So I'm here to encourage you all to experiment, experiment, experiment. Running a 2 week test prevents us from spending 6 months building something that nobody wants. And we, as leaders in these organizations, really need to encourage a high velocity environment where failing fast is celebrated because it leads to finding out the truth or the next step or the right pivot faster. And to me, this is the biggest competitive advantage that we all have too going forward. So, this laboratory mindset, test, fail, and pivot in days rather than months, is one of the linchpins to sort of how we're doing this. And to talk a little bit more tactically, we've really started to think about predictions using our data, yes, drinking our own Kool-Aid at Pendo, to do this much better. I'm going to talk in a little bit about a product that we released called Predict. We call our internal churn score, powered by Predict, Ward. We like to name things here, warding off churn. Hopefully, I'm getting a few chuckles maybe from Trisha and Jill who know me out there. But we're really using this to get ahead and get earlier on in a life cycle. It's all integrated though, where our CSMs, our renewal specialists, and our ADs work directly in Slack and Salesforce, which I'll show you in just a minute. And we're using this to really rewire how we think about working with our customers and where we're focusing our time. And not only do we have the ability to predict and learn about who's healthy, who's not, but we have the ability to action on that, whether it's through human-led intervention or fully digital intervention through Pendo as well. We've started to spin up these little center of excellences, particularly around how we're using predict and other scoring. This is how we move fast in the age of experimentation. I don't know about you all, but I'm sick of meetings where there's hundreds of people that drag us down and making decisions. No, as CX leaders, I
Yeah.
think in order to win this new world and change our strategy, we have to have a tight group of people who is given the power and is comfortable making quick decisions. I think I heard a quick unmute. I want to pause for a second.
I was just going to mention, Jenna, you had
Sure.
mentioned the consulting mindset. And I really
Totally.
like that because I think that's probably different from like a service mindset, right? And I wanted to see if you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think in the world of CX that we've lived in the past, we've had a lot of people who maybe were experts on the product that they worked in or were experts on what makes a good CSM. I believe in this new world where humans will matter the most are people who can speak to the types of end users that are truly using their platform. So, as an example, at Pendo, I think that consulting mindset is truly understanding why a CX practitioner would benefit from using Pendo to fight off churn, why a product leader would use Pendo to help them identify friction moments and create better products. So, to me, consulting is truly in this new world, we're going to have AI that understands our products. We're going to have things that answers our questions. We need to be more consultative around the strategy piece of those ICPs or, end users who use our products and deeply understand what is meaningful to them.
Love it.
Um, And the last thing I'll mention here is we're doing a lot in support, of course. We actually use a technology through FinAI. We're doing a lot more in terms of deflection. And this also does benefit us on the CSM side as well, because it's taking a lot of work off of their plate. And again, moving them more into, Keith, great question, more into those strategic conversations and out of the basics. So before we get into the Q&A, I thought it was important to touch on Pendo Predict, the sort of new star of our show of how we're doing this. Many of us have had predictive churn models or upsell cross-sell models in the past, and they've worked well. But they were designed by data teams, CX teams, needing to come together on a quarterly basis. There's a lot of time intense work that have gone into them, and they get stagnant really quickly. They don't always include product data. And I don't know about you all, but we have certainly proven that product usage is the number one indicator of renewal for us here at Pendo or not. Might be different in your businesses. So we were actually on a mission to figure this out. Long story short, through that mission, we found a company who was doing really good things. We decided to acquire them, embed the product directly within Pendo, and voila, we have Pendo Predict. But essentially, what it does, it combines Pendo data, product data, with all of your other sort of CRM data or unique data sources to create an AI model for you in very simple few clicks with AI, of course, embedded into it. It's unique. It's unique because it's consistently learning, and it's unique because it lives directly within our platform. So you have the opportunity to combine that Pendo data with other data. And it really is cool because not only can you take action on it within Pendo, but you can take all of the data out of Pendo and put it directly where your CX practitioners are working and push them directly into your workflows. And to show you what that looks like, on the left-hand side here, this is a screenshot of what the score actually looks like on all of our open renewal opportunities. So you go to an open renewal opportunity if you're a Pendo employee, it will tell you the customer's predict score. It'll tell you why in human language that a person can understand. And then we also have embedded playbooks where our named CSMs can action. On the right-hand side, as a leader, again, new insights to help me drive attention and focus more on that cumulative space. And the other thing I'll say is we don't have named CSMs everywhere. I'm sure you all are in that same boat. So the other really cool thing is you can then segment based on this data within Pendo and start to trigger guides to solve problems and start to move people from non-users to happy users. And you can also do things through our orchestrate tool to meet people directly in their email box to increase usage. So it's a really one-stop shop of learning about who your users are, or your customers are, excuse me, how healthy they are based on the score that you set up and the data that you bring in, and then ultimately actioning on it, both human-led and non-human-led, which has been a total game changer. And as I mentioned, just one example of how we are forcing ourselves to think differently here, and again, drinking our own Kool-Aid. So that is sort of what I wanted to kick off with here in terms of the formal presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing because Keith is going to play host again between Jay and myself, and we're going to just go deeper on these subjects and also try to answer some questions or take some comments that you all have as well.
Jenna, as
Yeah.
people put their comments in the chat or their questions for you in the chat, um, one of the things that you and I have talked about is that you all had health scoring before,
Yeah.
different versions of it. We see this all over the place, right? Everybody has a version of a health score. I'd be interested to know how many people on this call have one that they don't trust. But like, how have you gone about, like, there's an enablement
Yeah.
aspect,
Yeah.
like putting these kind of capabilities into your team. How have you gone about helping the teams transition to
Sure.
a sort of a data-driven approach to understanding customer health in general?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a challenge. Like even though we own this product, we hit the same challenges that you all have in terms of getting people to adopt. I would say that core group of people, the COE, which has CX leadership, data, and our ops teams coming together, has been a really great way for us to come together on a weekly basis, talk about the scores, talk about how people are using it. And like we talked about, experiment. We're going to try new things coming up. Like we're having roundtables with some of our early adopters and some of our laggards to learn why. But I think the other piece is like truly bringing them in behind the scenes and showing them how the sausage is made. We are bringing them in and showing them how the Predict score is created and how it is different than what we, another fun name, our previous score, which was called Nightingale, which was awesome and it worked for the time. But we're showing them the
Cool
difference
name.
between, yes, between the two names or between the two scores and why this is different, how it learns ongoing. And we're also showing them the back-tested data that proves that Predict is likely to score someone in the right place. And I think that transparency is what's really moving the needle there for us.
Yeah, we have a lot of interest in Predict in the questions as well. And one of them is for somebody who has an existing customer success platform, how does it work with those, or do they go away altogether?
You want me to start, Jenna, or
Yeah,
you want
you
to start?
start. I have an opinion on this, but go ahead and start, and then I.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We've had this conversation. I've personally had this conversation with a lot of CCOs and leaders of CS over the past uh, several months. One of the key drawbacks in my mind of a CS platform is that it actually, as much as we want to unify data and we want to reduce silos in our organizations, it actually creates another silo, right? It takes a copy of your CRM data and operates on it in a different way. That being said, there are usually a collection of tools that are pretty valuable to what we're all trying to do in terms of customer retention with these products. So, so it's interesting. What we're seeing is that a lot of those tools are interesting point solutions, right? Like, do I really need an embedded tool in a CSP to go do my NPS surveys, for example, or my CSATs, versus having something that's connected directly to the CRM?
Mhm.
So more and more, I think that that's an open question that we're really interested in exploring as well. And I'm hearing a lot more interest of, hey, we're spending a lot of money on these platforms. Is that money better used, with more agentic applications, more predictive applications that we can integrate directly with our CRM, whether that be HubSpot or Salesforce or anything else, and then sort of have that information right there at our fingertips and have the action happening automatically within that system, right? Without having to go to another system. But I don't think, there's nobody that I've talked to yet that says it's a slam dunk to just cancel your CSP subscription. So I wouldn't go out and do that based on this conversation.
Yeah, I think that this goes back to my running theme of experimentation. I think if we do not, and full transparency, we do not have a separate CX platform here at Pendo. Between Pendo and the other native tools between Salesforce and Slack, we operate really, really well. And because Predict is integrated with where we work, it's working really well. But I would say if you're interested in trying to figure that out, I would start with experiments, right? Like figure out if there is an opportunity to use your CRM, use your communication tools. If you're lucky to have something like Momentum or Gong, figure out how it's translating customer sentiment and bringing that data into other platforms. I think that there's a lot that folks could do through experimentation to figure out if their investment in tools like that are continuing to be necessary or no longer necessary.
There's been a lot of talk about these AI tools. I'm actually curious of how AI is impacting headcount and forecasting.
Yep. So look, I think that it is no secret, and I see some of my team members on here. Hey, friends, it is no secret that, as I said before, we are being challenged to think differently as leaders about how we balance this. I see it more truly and factually and honestly as how AI is sitting alongside the resources we do have to allow us to potentially stay at the scale in terms of human resources that we're at today to help drive efficiency in what we have today. I think humans are still necessary. Like we still need to make sure our customers feel valued. Many of us work with large enterprises. They're not fully ready to take on an agentic experience working with our tools. So, I think that I fall in the camp of like, we're not eliminating all jobs or anything like that, but we are being challenged to figure out for every new hire that we do have, how could AI help us solve for that? Or adjust the book of business that a current CSM could own by supporting them behind the scenes. So the challenge is out there, but I see it more as how do we sort of stay where we're at, growing with these AI tools, because humans are definitely still necessary in what we're doing and decision making. And like I said, with some of our larger enterprises, so it's really about shifting them to the right place so we're not spending human time in the wrong place, in my opinion.
Yeah, you had mentioned about making sure that customers and employees feel valued in the space. And
Yeah.
this kind of goes along with the question that April's asking. But if we have any data on different demographics and how they handle AI, like agentic experiences in general, are younger people more willing to accept it, or how does that work? And then how do we actually manage that? If we do have data to back up, let's say that certain demographics don't utilize those as much.
Yeah, Jay, I don't know if you do. I can't say I have data with me right now. I'm sure there's stuff that exists out there that now I'm interested in doing some research after this. But look, I'm sure we can all say that like there's fear associated with it, I think for all demographics and population. And I think it's our job to try to overcome that fear individually. I would say it's our job as CX leaders to help navigate that fear. One of our amazing leaders here at Pendo under our CX organization, Talia, is helping us think through that narrative. Like how do we want to talk about it internally? And how do we want to genuinely make sure people know that we are investing in their future careers, whether it's at Pendo or another company, learning how to use these tools and bringing them into their workflow, it's not going away. And so we have to find a way to embrace it. And it really is going to help boost their career no matter where they go. And so I think spending time investing some thought around what is the messaging you want to share within your organization, and then how do you back that up with proper training and proper access to actually learn these things is really important. We can't just say it and leave. We have to give time and energy. Let the good people that are diving in early teach other people. We just did that at our RKO for Pendo. We had some really great people who dove in quickly into these tools, teach other people and bring them along as an example. But I think we have to back up our words with time and space for our teams to actually learn new things and understand how it benefits them. And Jay, if you want to.
Yeah, let me put it this way. Who here, don't raise your hand, but do it hypothetical. Who here likes to enter data into your CRM or into Gainsight or whatever platforms you use? I know I don't. And increasingly, the more that I see, the less interested I am in doing that kind of busy work. So going back to what Keith, you had asked, and Jenna, you had talked about around that sort of consulting mindset, everybody with working with the client should be in a place where they're doing less busy work because of these tools. And every call should be like an EBR. It should all be about value, right? We shouldn't be having dedicated EBRs that somebody has to, plan for and show up for. Like, why aren't we just having value conversations on every single call? It's because we're doing too much busy work behind the scenes, or we're solving ticky-tacky problems that some of these tools may be able to solve. So I think it's less about who is interested in engaging in these things, and more about what are we just doing for the client without them even having to know we did it, right? Or even knowing that there was a problem. It's sort of the realization of the vision I think we've always had in SaaS. For 25 years, we've wanted to act on the data that we have in our platforms. And for 25 years, we've frankly been struggling to do it, in my opinion. So the only other thing I would add is that, Jenna mentioned some of the tools that the Pendo team has built. Like, we're doing the same thing. Like, we have people on our team who are using Claude Code to build wrappers around ChatGPT and to build automations and tooling that we are using internally to help drive our customer processes and our experience. And that's a fantastic way of codifying the things that the best people in our teams are doing and then giving those out to everybody else. agentic or not. It doesn't even have to feel agentic, but you could build them agentically, right? So there's like a lot of different directions I think that question goes.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about how we can take this data and make sure it's not ignored in an organization. But taking that one step further, and Jenna, I saw you responded to Howard about this, but how do you improve communication? Because if you have different teams and their own silos using the data, then there has to be that communication between the proactive and reactive support teams, for example. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that like any organization, we talked about silos a little bit earlier. It's difficult. It's a difficult problem. Transparently, our support organization, which would be considered more reactive, sits under our engineering team. To create a really solid partnership with our engineering was our hypotheses there, which is awesome. I sit under the revenue organization, and so I mean, this is where humans are necessary. Like, it takes a core group of people who really care to be bringing this data and insights out to the right folks. Again, I would encourage you, as I said before, like find a few key people, create that COE. Not everybody needs to be in the room for every conversation. When we're information sharing between what we're hearing on this more CX proactive side, we have access to all of those calls and data. We can download it. We bring it to our support team and we figure out how does this continue to feed their engine, their Fin AI bot that they're using as part of their reactive support team. So I think it really comes down to, again, this is why humans are necessary and strong communication and breaking down those silos, but doing it with as few people in the room as possible to move quickly. But I do think we all have the ability to probably track what our humans are talking about. And I encourage you to find a way to get that data, synthesize it, and start to feed it into some sort of agentic tool that you can start to test to answer some of those questions more directly. And I think you'd be surprised too how you can start to move the needle up in terms of complexity of what your people are talking about. Back to the consultative conversation earlier, I think we can move the needle on complexity about what our humans own by having that two-way street and sharing with our, however we're responding to our reactive questions from customers.
I love that you're bringing up the human element to this because we have so much data and so many tools coming in, and there's so much that we can be looking at. But not only the internal human experience, but how do we do all this without ignoring the end user experience as well? Understanding that there's a person behind the screen.
Yeah. Jay, do you want to start this one? I
Oh,
think
I
he's
think you're
muted.
muted, Jay.
I I blanked and I was muted, so I had a double faux pas there.
This is the human element,
Yeah,
people.
you're
Okay. We're
witnessing
still
this
human.
Exactly.
You can
real
now
time
know we're
Yeah.
here.
not agents. Yes.
Yeah. To repeat it, Jay, it's just, yeah, how do we do all this without ignoring the end user and making sure that we continue to remember that there's a person behind all of this data?
Yeah, somebody is accountable for something, some outcome on the other side, right? Like users might become a thing of the past, the way we think about users today, pointing and clicking in software, right? But even if we're doing work on their behalf, somebody is the recipient of the value of the product that we have sold, right? Whether that be a leader, an executive, a frontline contributor, no matter what. So to me, I think, I like to think about what is not going to change when you have these sort of shifts in the world. And one of the things I think is not going to change is that we really need to understand what our customers are trying to achieve, what the users are trying to achieve, what their personal outcome is, and cater to that. I could tell you that putting a chatbot on your customer community and having that be your primary source of interaction, that might work for somebody, to April's question, right? But it might not be the way that people need to get their work done or their problem solved in that particular instance. So I think there is a real risk here that we sort of over rotate and it's agents for everything, agents for all. I think that's what we're all trying to avoid. But part of that is still listening, right? And really understanding, institutionally understanding when we build our products, right? What are they trying to achieve? And then I think obviously customer facing teams, whether it be success, support, professional services, all still have a massive role to play in that. informing how to design the right solutions for our customers. Luckily or unluckily, however you want to look at it, every single call we have now is recorded, right? So, like, how are we using all of that insight and data, raw, unstructured data to really inform? Like, we have the opportunity to do that now, and we never did before, not in this way. So, I think it's exciting to really be able to deeply understand your customer, your users, and then cater a specific outcome to their needs.
Yeah. How does this work with customers who are constantly evolving? Like, this is something Ori asked about, if there's a challenge in keeping the product guidance and documentation up to date.
Yeah, yeah. And just I will dive into that, but just, quick tactic, I threw it in the chat. Like we need to give our customers exit buttons, right? Like there's going to be an experience, but we have to make sure that there's, when you call in somewhere and you hit 0000, speak with a human, we still need to give our customers that. And I don't even want to call it an exit escalation path because it's not always an escalation. Sometimes they just definitely want an exit button. We need to make sure we have that. And secondarily, like we still want to, I mean, I'm sure most of you all would agree that particularly with our larger customers, meeting someone face to face totally changes the game of what we know about them, what their outcomes are, how we want to drive strategy together. And so I still think there is time and energy to be spent on sites and spending time with our customers, learning, watching them use their products or their tools. And to me, that's so still valuable for many size customers, where AI will just never be able to replace. So I wanted to mention that. Um, and then Keith, can you repeat the other question? Sorry, I went on a bit of a dialogue there.
Yeah, let me go about specifically customers keeping up their documentation
Oh,
and like
yes.
product guidance and all of that
Yeah,
as they
yeah.
evolve.
A great question.
I think it's a really good question. I'll answer this one simply, and Jay, if you want to add anything. Look, we're actually, I think I just pinged the leaders I report to. I think we need to double down on, we have a team called CX AI and automation, and our education team sits under that. I think it's one of our most critical linchpins of being successful this year. And so I think we invest a little bit more on the education side to make sure that they continue to take the valuable insights that are coming through calls or questions that we're answering, and they're able to translate that either into the agentic places that we're working or within our documentation. But these are the people that are going to keep some of that afloat. So I almost think it's about shifting your investments a little bit, to double down on those things a bit more.
Love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, think about how fast products are evolving now because literally, engineers can pump out 10, 50, 100x times the code that they could just a year ago, right? If you're using Claude Code or Replit or Base 44, whatever platform you're using, like that's how software is being written now in the best companies. So it's happening much faster, but we also have the tools to help us generate that kind of documentation much faster. Now you always have to validate it, right? And keep an eye on that stuff. But it's funny, I've gotten to the point where we were using a vendor for something the other day, and one of my questions to that vendor was like, what AI tools are you going to use to speed up your work? You're going to get paid whatever you need, like whatever you're charging for the service that we're buying. But like, I want to know that my team couldn't just do it faster, right? It's really more about speed than it is about even the spend in some of these things. So, a little tangential, but it just came to mind with, what tools we should all be really pivoting toward the tools that we have to do the kind of work that we used to do, which is handwriting these things.
Yeah.
Mm.
I wanted to touch, Keith, it was okay. Parker
Yeah.
asked a really good question about like, how do we measure the success of these initiatives during experimentation? And, how should leadership be celebrating the outcomes? Should it be the outcomes only or recognizing the right leading behaviors, even if the experimentation failed? I love this question. Thank you, Parker, for asking it. Look, I think measuring the success means that you start your experiment with some sort of hypotheses about what you expect the outcome to be. So if the experiment is getting people engaged with a webinar, ultimately you're going to have results to help show did whatever thing that you changed within your processes move the needle on that. And so I encourage every experiment to be designed with some sort of outcome that you're trying to achieve so that it is easily measurable and it can be a simple outcome. I believe in terms of celebrating, this is one of our biggest jobs as leaders. And frankly, again, all super relevant to what's happening in my world today. I actually am spending a lot of time bringing the folks that are doing a lot of this experimentation to the forefront, setting up time with our CEO even to talk about some of the things that we're doing so he has awareness, setting up time with them and our sales leaders so that they have awareness. And it doesn't mean that everything we're going to talk to them about is working or is even far enough along to say that it's working. But I think one, bringing those people forward really allows some airtime and the spirit of innovation to start to shine across your business, which it is really important. And these conversations, I'm sure you're all having them, whether or not something's working or not, just having the conversation, I think is so important because it inspires creativity. And that's what we need in this world is truly inspired creativity. And so I say celebrate it all. Bring the people who are doing this good work behind the scenes. Sometimes they're the people that don't like to be celebrated, so we need to bring them forward. But I think ultimately the conversations lead to what about this? Have we tried that? And that's really the power that we need right now is that ideation.
Being able to utilize that data in the context of KPIs and other overall business goals is crucial to any of this. It doesn't matter if it was a success or a failure, understanding how it is affecting these KPIs helps for everybody to understand where we actually stand with the usage of these AI initiatives. But there's a lot we've talked about, and a big question is how do people get started with this? A company who might be interested, what do they do? I mean, we've talked about various tools, but also a lot of different ideas of something people could do even today, this week.
Jay, you want to go first and then I'll chime in?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with clients, some of them even on this call, who have started very, very simply and basically by building themselves, tools and models inside of ChatGPT or Claude, right? The one thing I would caution you on here, just to make sure, we don't give you bad advice, and you need to check with your teams on this, but make sure that you're using an enterprise version of these tools so that you're not handing over your company's data for training on these platforms. This probably goes without saying for most people these days, but it's a good reminder. But start simple. Try to understand, what are the basic pieces that you need to come together in a common place. Remember that with all these AI tools, context is the thing that's probably even more important. The LLMs themselves, the models, those all get commoditized over time. You see it happening already. The cost of tokens with OpenAI, with Claude, it's coming down. And as data centers go into space, guess what? They're going to go down even further. That's a joke. But maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what Elon does there. But the reality is that getting your data in the right place, it doesn't even have to be necessarily all clean and perfect these days anymore. That's the beautiful part about where we are. But it does have to be accessible, right, from the model. So that is really the gating factor that I see in AI applications in the clients that we're working with. Um, where is all this data, right? And is it accessible from the tools that we're trying to use to build these kind of workflows? So start
Yeah, no,
there.
yeah, and I know you already answered this, Jenna, to Christina in the chat, but I wanted to bring it up. Do you think how people get started with this, how companies get started, changes with the industry that the organization is a part of?
Yes. And I say yes because some of us might work for organizations where we're, because of our size and scale, we're getting a lot more runway to experiment and we're getting access to tools because the company wants us to be experimenting and we're getting that push. Some of us might work for larger enterprises or organizations where security feels different because of the type of data they have, the type
Hmm.
of customers they support. So I do think, to Jay's point, it is important to understand where your business is at and how much you want to push that, and how much you can push that. I feel lucky to sit in the space that we do because we're certainly getting that push. And, we're doing it in a way that is still very thoughtful about Pendo data, using enterprise licenses. Certain things aren't approved, not everything is approved, but I do think that's interesting. And I'll also say it's interesting from a customer facing perspective, back to the comment around how do we make sure our customers still feel valued? We need to know which of our customers are not super innovative in this world yet, because some of them can't be, some of them aren't. Some of the big banks that we work with, although I am surprised how quickly some are actually innovating, which is pretty cool. And they have budget to invest in these products, which is also very cool. But know where your customers are. And if they're a bit of a laggard due to reasons, again, that are important to their business, we should probably meet them similarly from a support perspective to the best of our ability, is the other thing I'll say on that. So we need to sort of definitely, I guess the best advice I have is like when you're moving fast and experimenting, like find time on at least on a monthly basis to pause, figure out where your experiments are, figure out the reaction you're getting from your people. Like you gotta calibrate and you gotta consistently be talking about where your customers at and where they're not at. Otherwise things can get like
Yeah.
too far from under you, so to speak.
Yeah, would you say it's fair to say that the path that many teams are taking is about the same, but the speed is different? I think about
Yeah.
I've worked in the medical space, right? And they work with very different data and they take a lot longer at the beginning, but they set really strong foundations because they
Mhm.
have to, right? They have to really make sure everything's working really well at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair statement. And we I think it's the space people work in, the size organization, the tolerance to risk. There's definitely a lot of factors, but I think that that's a really good point.
I would say
Hey,
that like the only thing to be careful of with all of this is that no matter who we are, I heard of a tech company the other day, a tech company like somebody in our industry, and I'm assuming we're all probably in similar types of companies here, that still is sort of hung up on the legalities of using, these tools internally at their organization. And do you know how far behind they're going to be in just a year's time? I mean, this stuff is moving so quickly. Like, remember, it's only been what, 3 years since ChatGPT came out, and we saw that for the first time ever. I remember the first time I saw an iPhone flip from the side the rotate from landscape to portrait, and I thought it was a miracle, right? Same thing with the LLM, but that was only 3 years ago, right,
Yeah.
when we first got a glimpse of that. And look how far this stuff has come. So there are tools today that help put data in the right place, that help gate these things and secure them in a way that people can be experimenting. So no matter where you are organizationally at like the enterprise level, being able to roll this stuff into production, my hope is that most of these teams, most of these, our teams have a sandbox to actually understand this stuff, because you can't fully understand it until you actually touch it. If you haven't gone out and played with Claude Code yet, I would encourage you to go build something or use Base 44 or use Replit, right? Go build something with those tools. You can't unsee it once you see it. It will change your whole perspective on the future of this industry, right? Like the music industry used to be big record labels, big productions. Now it's, indie creators are making most of the music we listen to, right? With some exceptions, Spotify. That's where our software world is headed. That's the same thing that's going to happen. We have big software publishers today. We will continue to have those, but there's going to be a lot more cottage industry software development in the future. How do we account for that in our businesses? We all need to be on the front lines of figuring that out. So, sorry, soapbox moment, but
oh, great comments. I know I actually have a question. We're getting to the end of this. And I want both Jenna, Jay to make a quick prediction. In 5 years, we're talking about these predictive health scores. Do you think that those health scores are going to be something that is absolutely necessary for businesses to have, or just a nice to have?
I think absolutely necessary. I think that, regardless of the agentic world that we are living in, understanding where our customers are at scale and having solid data behind that is a non-negotiable and will be a non-negotiable.
Jay, what do you think?
100%. I mean, how can you scale without that? I think, I see my friend Justin on here, Chappelle. I don't know if he's still on or not, but he's got this mantra. We spent the first years of customer success very reactive. Then we moved to this proactive mindset. Now we're in the predictive world. Guys, the whole world is going to predictive. Like that's everything you consume on your phone every day is predictive. It's predicting which post you're going to see next on LinkedIn or on Instagram or whatever, or TikTok, right? So to think that's not going to happen in B2B, it's crazy. And you can sit on it and your leadership teams can sit on it, but your competitors will be doing that, right? And so that's the risk of getting behind here is that you just lose your competitive advantage. I think a lot of companies are going to have to go buy other competitors, right? That are doing things moving faster, frankly, to be able to handle this stuff. But yes, this is my simple
Yeah.
answer. It's
No, I
required.
love it. Well, we are getting to the end of our discussions here. So I wanted to open it up for Jenna, Jay, if you have any other final comments to make for the group.
Yeah, I do. I think, thank you for asking, because I was going to say this, whether or not you opened up to final comments. Look, we've talked a lot about AI here, and I feel like one of those memes that you see on Instagram where it's like someone joking about a call that you're on and your boss is just like, AI, AI, AI. Hopefully we made it more applicable in real world within the walls that we all sit in. But look, nothing replaces good human judgment, I guess is my final say. And I think many of our roles will be moving into roles where our human judgment about how we use these tools and the outcomes of using these tools benefits our business or doesn't benefit our business. I think that's what our roles will start to evolve to. And so, human judgment will still prevail and still exist. And there are many things that are not AI led that still need to happen in this next era of AI. And I talked about one of them and one example earlier was how we educate our people and how we take care of our staff that's still there doing the good work. Yeah, I could probably access an AI tool that teaches me about AI, but I need to go seek that out and I need to create that plan for my team and I need to get them excited about that. Nobody else is going to do that. So human judgment still prevails. Humans are necessary to help move into this next era are my final comments.
I love that, Jen. I remember learning about there's a lot of financial models that we use in the finance sector, and it always assumes everybody's going to be very reasonable, and humans are very often unreasonable. And it takes a human to recognize that and to tweak things to be able to make it work. Jay, what about you? Last
Yeah,
comments.
I think just the final comment I would make is that this is not a delegation thing. Like learning these tools, the capabilities, getting hands-on with them is not something you want to delegate, even if you're a chief this or chief that or a CEO of this or that or a VP, right, Jenna? Like you got to get hands-on with this stuff. It's just not something that you can really fully understand until you are. So, you know, I think, there's a couple of benefits there. One is you know what the capabilities are, but two, you can sort of push your team along as well, right? And help them get better because this is coming. It's not like something that is optional for anybody in any industry to opt into. It doesn't matter. And especially in ours, right? Just look at what's happened in the markets over the past 4 weeks with regard to software companies, right? The we have been put on notice that we have to continue to grow. We have to get way more efficient as we do it, and these are the tools to help do that. So get hands on. That's my recommendation.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jenna. Jenna was just about to mention the contact info. Jenna just posted it in the chat for anybody who wants to contact Jay or
Oh,
Jenna
quick
after
flash on
this
the
call.
screen too.
Yeah, perfect. Now, we do like to give people a little bit of buffer because I know a lot of people probably have a meeting at the top of the hour. So thank you, everybody, for coming. If you have any other questions, here are the emails in the chat and on screen. Thank you so much. This was a great call. Thank you, Jenna, so much for coming.
Of
Jay as
course.
Thank you,
well. All
Jenna.
the comments
Having
was made.
me. It was so great to see so many of my friends out in the community too. I appreciate you coming and joining and, reach out if you want to have further dialogue. I want to learn from you too. We're not the experts in it all, so reach out with your ideas and thoughts, and we're happy to chat.
And also from Balboa, we will have a roundtable every month. So if you are following us on LinkedIn, watch for that and you can sign up for the next one as soon as it comes out.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Keith. Bye,
Later.
y'all.